Good morning. So I wanted to share this beautiful scenery with you, and I know the waves are crashing a bit loud, but I've done a couple of tests with my microphone, and I feel confident that you'll be able to hear me if you adjust your volume one way or the other. Sometimes it can actually come off a little bit too loud, so hopefully you'll find the perfect spot and be able to continue the video with me as we review chapter 9. And today's section is drying out and crippling. So I want to start by sharing the story that is tucked within this section. And it's a really short story, and it's something that you can remember very easily, and it's powerful. It carries a very powerful message. And so we'll start with that story, and then we'll expand on that and talk about it. So it says, a man came to a Szabo, and this word, Szabo, is Hungarian. I believe that's part of the author's heritage and background. So she likes to use different languages, as you've seen throughout the book, and I enjoy that because we learn, a little bit that way. But so a man came to a Szabo, or a tailor, and tried on a suit. As he stood before the mirror, he noticed the vest was a little uneven at the bottom. "Oh," said the tailor, "don't worry about that. Just hold the shorter end down with your left hand and no one will ever notice." While the customer proceeded to do this, he noticed that the lapel of the jacket curled up instead of lying flat. "Oh, that," said the tailor, "that's nothing. Just turn your head a little and hold it down with your chin." The customer complied, and as he did, he noticed that the inseam of the pants was a little short, and he felt that the rise was a bit too high. "Oh, don't worry about that," said the tailor. "Just pull the inseam down with your right hand, and everything will be perfect." The customer agreed and purchased the suit. The next day, he wore his new suit with all the accompanying hand and chin alterations. As he limped through the park with his chin holding down his lapel, one hand tugging at the vest, the other hand grasping his crotch, two old men stopped playing checkers to watch him stagger by. "Missing! Oh my God," said the first man. "Look at that poor crippled man." The second man reflected for a moment and then murmured, "Again, yes, the crippling is too bad. But I wonder, where did he get such a nice suit?" So, yes, such a rich story in so few words that we can dissect and pull apart the symbolism and how it applies to our life and our experiences and what the lessons are that we can pull from it. And I want to share with you first a story that I heard. This is like a real, somebody's real experience. And I don't remember, I saw this in the last 2 or 3 weeks just as I was scrolling YouTube. And I don't remember the video or the content creator or any of the background information, but essentially it was analyzing the impact of an adult who had grown up in a household, if I'm not mistaken, that had created this learned helplessness in his mind, like this psychological handicap, which kind of ties into this story. And this section is called drying out and crippling, right? But the young man, I say young man, I think he was like in his 30s, and he lived at home with his parents. And the psychologist, therapist that was working with him, learned that his room was a mess. He was, just not motivated to do things. And he asked him, he said, "Hey, why don't you just start with small, manageable steps, baby steps, right?" And so he encouraged him. He said, "How about you just start with vacuuming your room? Not, everything all at once. It can be overwhelming. Just vacuuming your room." So what happened, this is the interesting part. What happened was, he brought the vacuum cleaner to the door entryway of his room and sat it there. And then he continued to walk past it and step over it for 2 or 3 weeks instead of actually using it. So the point I want to make here is when you're put through psychological abuse, it can impact your mind. And let me just real quick say, I'm not making an excuse for that man that I just told you about with a vacuum cleaner. I'm certainly not making an excuse, but I just want to just share everything that I come across that's applicable to what we're talking about with you, just to get the wheels turning, because I think a lot of times, people are just lazy sometimes, and people are just going to take advantage of people and pretend like they don't know any better. In other words, this whole learned helplessness can certainly be fake and a way to play a victim, basically, and just mooch off of people. I absolutely know this. I've seen this in my environment many times, and people that work the system, and it's real, and it's despicable. And if you can do something, you should do something. There's a person that really inspires me that works at a local Goodwill, and by everything that I can observe, he would 100% qualify for disability and be able to not have to work. But he chooses to come in and be a door greeter. And I have such respect for people who push through, who are able. And I understand not everybody's able. I understand that. But the point is, what I want us to focus on is the fact that, I think all of us can develop a psychological handicap, a crippling of sorts, especially after you've been through psychological abuse. And I want to say especially during psychological abuse. And then what happens is because we are responsible people, when we're experiencing being frozen and, like the guy stepping over the vacuum as an example of, like, if it were us in the midst of psychological abuse, we would blame ourselves for, like, why can't we just do whatever this is, But in reality, psychological abuse impacts you. And so I view, before we go further into her analysis of this story, I view the Taylor like the narcissist in our life, getting us to dismiss red flags, getting us to dismiss the abuse, and to just continue on, limping and crooked and twisted up and trying to get us to accept that we should be okay with living that way when we shouldn't. And so, and then what happens is, if you're with someone like that in a close, intimate relationship for a long time, I think it can become the voice in your own mind. Like a lot of times, psychologists say that our parents' voice becomes our own internal voice that directs us and helps us to live by, a particular inner parent type voice and guidance system. And if that's messed up, then, we're going to carry that forward in our mind. But I think it can also happen if you've been put through psychological abuse from a spouse or somebody really close for many years. And I think that part of the healing process is recognizing the areas in your life where you are limping. Where are you limping? Where are you, just making do and just holding something down with your chin in your hand and walking like this, like you have to evaluate yourself. And that's something that narcissists can't do. And so it's a good practice anyway, just all the time throughout life as you grow, because you want to keep that growth mindset. But especially as you're healing and coming out of psychological abuse, to really turn that introspection on and be able to see those areas you need to work on. And a good and true and loving friend, a great friend, is going to be able to deliver these messages to you as they observe these things in you in a loving manner to help you become better. It's that whole iron sharpens iron message in the Bible, and it's true. And but you've got to be able to accept that constructive criticism, because it's for your benefit. So let's go ahead and dive into the introduction part of the section called Drying Out and Crippling. It says, most of a woman's depressions, ennuis, and wandering confusions are caused by a severely restricted soul life in which innovation, impulse, and creation are restricted or forbidden. Yes, just like, it becomes harder and harder to be able to genuinely express happiness and joy when you're around a narcissist, because it's triggering to them. They can't handle it because it's shining that light on that void within them, that they're not able to feel joy. They're literally not able. And they put that mask on, like they're happy. And that's where you get the forced smiles and the forced laughs that are odd and off. And, it's an act. And it's a really creepy thing to experience. And I know if you're watching this video and you're going along this path with me, you've been through the experience of narcissism in another person close to you, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. We can laugh about it now once we get out, right? Once we're away from that. But yes, so it becomes stifling to live with these people, to be closely engaged with these people on a regular basis. It's like if you want to keep your peace and not trigger them, then it's like you have to stuff down your joy, and that's no way to live. You know what I mean? So it says, women receive enormous impulse to act from the creative force. We cannot overlook the fact that there is still much thieving and hamstringing of women's talents through cultural restriction and punishment of her natural and wildish instincts. We can break away from this condition if there is an underground river or even a little freshet pouring from somewhere soulful into our lives. But if a woman far from home, here's the key part, surrenders all power. If a woman far from home, I would say our soul home, right? Like in the story Sealskin, Soulskin. If you're far from home and you surrender your power, she will first become a fog, then a vapor, and finally a wisp of her former wildish self. How appropriate. It's been very foggy, and it's like you feel that fire inside of you just kind of dwindle down, when you're with these people, that spark. But the spark remains. Sometimes you have to dig for it to find it, but it's there. And once you get a grasp on it again, it's our job to rekindle that fire. And that spark is recognizable in our own kind as well. You can see it. And it's just a beautiful thing, isn't it? It's numinosity is what it is. It's that part inside of us that's part of the divine. That's how I see it. So then she puts the story that I read to you about the tailor in the suit, the man in the suit, in this section. And then now we're going to go into her evaluation of that. So it says, the reaction of the last old man, remember he was the one that said, the crippling is too bad, but I wonder, where did he get such a nice suit? That one, that's the one we're talking about. She says, the reaction of the last old man constitutes a common cultural response toward a woman who has developed an impeccable persona, but who is all crippled up with trying to maintain it. Well, yes, she is crippled, but look at how nice she looks. Look at how good she is. Look at how well she's doing. When we become dried out, we try to walk all crippled up in order to make it appear that we are handling everything, that all is well and just so. All right, I'm going to pause here. How many of you have felt like, and I don't think this was a conscious and intentional process, but I wonder, how many of you, and you don't have to answer this is just for you to think about, how many of you have felt like you came to a realization that you were actually covering for the abusive person in your life? That, deep down you knew that things were wrong, but you didn't say anything to anyone because it's kind of like you realized that you were providing a cover for them, and not only for them, but for the relationship that you have with this person. It's kind of like if you blow that cover, then the relationship is shot. It's done for. So there's layers of reasons for limping and walking that way and trying to make do. There's layers of reasons that we do that, and I understand that. But, we understand now that's no way to live. And so she says, whether it is the soul skin that is missing or the culture-made skin that doesn't fit, we are crippled by pretending it is otherwise. When we do this, life is diminished and the cost to ourselves is very high. I know that for me, in the midst of a situation like this, it's kind of like I was so engulfed in it and just consumed and focused on it, which they want to keep you focused on them, even if it's negative attention. Any attention is good attention to narcissists. But it's kind of like I wasn't even considering the cost to me until for some of us, it may come down to your health and safety at some point. And then at that point, you have no choice. It's a matter of saving your life, and for some people. But until that point, I think a lot of people don't really consider what the cost is, because you're not going to find the person that, I don't think, and again, I try not to make absolute statements, but it's kind of like if there's a person that, God intends for you to be with that is, healthy and a beautiful soul, and if there's a fulfilling and healthy and balanced job or work environment that God intends for you, that could be out there. We could go on and on and on with all kind of different life experiences that work together and build on one another to create a beautiful life that we can be missing out on because we're stuck in these bad situations. And when you're in the midst of it, it's like you're in a battle, and a mental, psychological battle, and it's consuming all of your energy and your attention and your time. And that's rightfully so, especially with regards to keeping yourself safe and trying to untangle all of this, web of lies and gaslighting that you've been subjected to. You have to go through this process. So there's no benefit to self-convicting, in my opinion, when you're coming out of this. Yeah, you're going to be able to look back and say, look at the cost, look at all these years wasted or whatever it is. But why? Because, on the flip side, like I mentioned recently, we can't have the mind of God. We don't know how He's going to use these experiences for our purpose, for what He intends for us. It could be that maybe we even had to go through some hard things in life to be able to be positioned to receive the blessings He has intended for us. And I try to think about that. There's a beautiful person I know. She's a yoga instructor, and she said one time, I thought this was cool, a cool mindset. She said, how about instead of saying, why did this happen to me, we start to frame it differently and say, what if this is happening for me? Not, why is this happening to me, but what if this is happening for me? And so that's certainly hard to wrap your mind around in the moment, but hindsight often proves that very thing. And I believe in divine timing. I believe that we're not alone, even when we feel alone. And so I just think that's a lot for us to think about, So then she goes into talking about dreams, and it's really interesting. So let's dive into that. It says, when a woman begins to dry out, it becomes harder and harder for her to function in the hardy, wildish nature. Ideas, creativity, life itself thrives on moisture. Women in this condition often have dark man dreams. Thugs, prowlers, or rapists threaten them, hold them hostage, steal from them, and far worse. Sometimes these dreams are trauma dreams arising from an actual assault, but most often they are dreams of women who are drying out, who are not giving care to the instinctual side of their lives, who steal from themselves, deprive the creative function, and sometimes make no effort to help themselves or even work very hard to ignore the call back to the water. So notice how she said, sometimes make no effort to help themselves. That just reminds me of that story I was telling you about with the guy in the vacuum. And so there's like this blockage that can happen, in our psyche, and it's crippling. But yes, and then she goes into a section about injured animal dreams, and that throughout all the years of her practice, she had both men and women that experienced this. And she says, she has to wonder if that's not a part of the collective unconscious, coming through in our dreams with a message, not only in as a symbol, she says, of, our the condition of our instinctive psyche. And in other words, we're not living anymore as a whole, as a collective, openly align with our intuition and our gut. How often do you hear, groups getting together to socialize, talking about these kind of things? And they're personal, and I'm not saying we should openly talk about it amongst a group or anything, because it is kind of like your pearls, right? But I feel like that's probably a true statement that, we're all dealing with this spiritual battle in one way or another, and the battlefield is the mind. And so I thought that was interesting. She talked about the injured animal dreams. I can actually relate to the dreams she mentioned before that, about the dark man dreams. But then she goes into that kind of wraps up this section, and I want to do multiple videos for the sections so that we're able to talk. So I'm going to wrap this one up. It says, as we have seen, it is hard to recognize our condition until we become like Seal Woman in her distress, peeling, limping, losing juice, going blind. So it is a gift from the immense vitality of the psyche. That's so wild. I had not read this closing paragraph. And I was talking about, what if things happen for you, It says, so it is a gift from the immense vitality of the psyche, then, that there is deep in the unconscious a caller, an old one who rises to the surface of our consciousness and begins to incessantly call us back to our true natures. So at some point in the midst of this battle in our mind, this psychological abuse that we go through, at some point, there is that calling, and it might be a person that God places on your path, that just reaches in and pulls you out. It could be just a moment, a spiritual moment where you're given sudden clarity, and you just know that you gotta leave, or you gotta do something. It could be an accident. It could be a life-threatening or scary accident where it's kind of like, hey, I need to get real, and admit the hard things and do what I need to do to get back on track, on the track that God intends for me. So, I just hope that this has inspired you, and I hope that you don't delay in enjoying your life, and I just hope that you're in a place where you're able to experience joy again, that you don't have to hide joy, and that you can recognize the people that you can align yourself with that have that spark inside as well. So thanks again for coming along, and I will be posting more videos very soon, and I just hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon.